on the forelegs over his shoulders, his jutting elbows making what had seemed the outstretched arms, and above the head of the burden bearer rose the great head of the bear. As the man came closer the animal's head flopped to one side and a red tongue lolled from its mouth. Haw Haw Langley moved back step by step through the cabin until his shoulders struck the opposite wall, and at the same time Mac Strann entered the room. He had no ear for his visitor's hail, but cast his burden to the floor. It dropped with a shock that shook the house from the rattling stovepipe to the crackling boards. For a moment Mac Strann regarded his prey. Then he stooped and drew open the great jaws. The mouth within was not so red as the bloody hands of Mac Strann, and the big white fangs, for some reason, did not seem terrible in comparison with the hunter. Having completed his survey, he turned slowly upon Haw Haw Langley and lowered his eyebrows to stare. So doing, the light for the first time struck full upon his face. Haw Haw Langley bit his thin lips and his eyes widened almost to the normal. For the ugliness of Mac Strann was the most terrible species of ugliness. Not disfigured features, but a discord which pervaded the man and came from within him like a sound. Feature by feature his face was not ugly. The mouth was very large, to be sure, and the jaw too heavily square, and the nose needed somewhat greater length and less width for real comeliness. The eyes were truly fine, being very large and black, though when Mac Strann lowered his bush of brows his eyes were practically reduced to gleams of light in the consequent shadow. There was a sharp angle in his forehead, the lines of it meeting in the centre and shelving up and down. One felt, unpleasantly, that there were heavy muscles overlaying that forehead. One felt that to touch it would be a pad of flesh, and it gave to Mac Strann, more than any other feature, a peculiar impression of resistless physical power. In the catalogue of his features, indeed, there was nothing severely objectionable, but out of it came a feeling of too much strength. A glance at his body reassured the first thought. It was not normal. His shirt bulged tightly at the shoulders with muscles. He was not tall, inches shorter than his brother Jerry, for instance, but the bulk of his body was incredible. His torso was a veritable barrel that bulged out both in the chest and the back, and even the tremendous thighs of Mac Strann were perceptibly bowed out by the weight which they had to carry, and there was about his management of his arms a peculiar awkwardness which only the very strongest of men exhibit, as if they were burdened by the weight of their mere dangling hands. This giant, having placed his eyes in shadow, peered for a long moment at Haw Haw Langley, but very soon his glance began to waver. It flashed towards the wall. It came back and rested upon Langley again. He was like a dog, restless under a steady stare, and as Haw Haw Langley noted this, a glitter of joy came into his beady eyes. "You're Jerry's man," said Mac Strann at length. There was about his voice the same fleshy quality that was in his face. It came literally from his stomach, and it made a peculiar rustling sound, such as comes after one has eaten sticky, sweet things. People could listen to the voice of Mac Strann and forget that he was speaking words. The articulation ran together in a sort of glutinous mass. "I'm a friend of Jerry," said the other. "I'm Langley." The big man stretched out his hand. The hair grew black down to the knuckles. The blood of the bear still streaked it. It was large enough to be an organism with independent life, but when Langley, with some misgiving, trusted his own bony fingers within that grasp, it was only as if something fleshy, soft, and bloodless had closed over them. When his hand was released, he rubbed it covertly against his trouser leg, to remove dirt, restore the circulation. He did not know why. "Who's bothering Jerry?" asked Mac Strann. "And where is he?" He went to the wall without waiting for an answer, and took down the saddle. Now the cowpuncher's saddle is a heavy mass of leather and steel, and the saddle of Mac Strann was far larger than the ordinary. Yet he took down the saddle as one might remove a card from a rack. Haw Haw Langley moved towards the door to give himself a free space for exit. "Jerry's hurt," he said, and he watched. There was a ripple of pain on the face of Mac Strann. "Hoss kicked him? Fall on him?" he asked. "It weren't a horse." "Huh? A cow?" "Weren't no cow. It weren't no animal." Mac Strann faced full upon Langley. When he spoke it seemed as if it were difficult for him to manage his lips. They lifted an appreciable space before there was any sound. "What was it?" "A man." Langley edged back towards the door. "With what?" "A gun." And Langley saw the danger that was coming even before Mac Strann moved. He gave a shrill yelp of terror and whirled and sprang for the open. But Mac Strann sprang after him and reached. His whole body seemed to stretch like an elastic thing, and his arm grew longer. The hand fastened on the back of Langley, plucked him up and jammed him against the wall. Haw Haw crumpled to the floor. He gasped, "It weren't me, Mac. For God's sake, it weren't me!" His face was a study. There was abject terror in it, and yet there was also a sort of grisly joy, and his eyes feasted on the silent agony of Mac Strann. "Where?" asked Mac Strann. "Mac," pleaded the vulture, who cringed on the floor, "gimme your word you ain't going to hold it against me." "Tell me," said the other, and he framed the face of the vulture between his large hands. If he pressed the heels of those hands together bones would snap, and Haw Haw Langley knew it. And yet nothing but a wild delight could have set that glitter in his little eyes, just as nothing but a palsy of terror could have set his limbs twitching so. "Who shot him from behind?" demanded the giant. "It wasn't from behind," croaked the bearer of ill tidings. "It was from the front." "While he wasn't looking?" "No, he was beat to the draw." "You're lying to me," said Mac Strann slowly. "So help me God!" cried Langley. "Who done it?" "A little feller. He ain't half as big as me. He's got a voice like Kitty Jackson, the schoolmarm, and he's got eyes like a starved pup. It was him that done it." The eyes of Mac Strann grew vaguely meditative. "Nope," he mused in answer to his own thoughts. "I won't use no rope. I'll use my hands. Where'd the bullet land?" A fresh agony of trembling shook Langley, and a fresh sparkle came in his glance. "Betwixt his ribs, Mac, and right on through, and it come out his back." But there was not an answering tremor in Mac Strann. He let his hands fall away from the face of the vulture, and he caught up the saddle. Langley straightened himself. He peered anxiously at Strann as if he feared to miss something. "I dunno whether he's living right now or not," suggested Haw Haw. But Mac Strann was already striding through the door. Sweat was pouring from the lather-flecked bodies of their horses when they drew rein at last at the goal of their long, fierce ride, and Haw Haw slunk behind the broad form of Mac Strann when the latter strode into the hotel. Then the two started for the room in which, they were told, lay Jerry Strann. "There it is," whispered Haw Haw as they reached the head of the stairs. "The door's open. If he was dead the door would be closed, most like." They stood in the hall and looked in upon a strange picture. For flat in the bed lay Jerry Strann, his face very white and oddly thin, and over him leaned the man who had shot him down. They heard Dan Barry's soft, gentle voice query, "How are you feeling now, partner?" He leaned close beside the other, his fingers upon the wrist of Jerry. "A pile better," muttered Jerry Strann. "Seems like I got a more fighting chance to pull through now." "Just you keep lying here quiet," advised Dan Barry, "and don't stir around none. Don't start no worrying. You're going to live long as you don't lose no more blood. Keep your thoughts quiet. There ain't no cause for you to do nothing, but just keep your eyes closed and breathe, and think of yellow sunshine and green grass in the spring, and the wind lazing the clouds along across the sky. That's all you got to think about. Just keep quiet, partner. It's easy to do it now you're with me. Seems like there's a pile of strength running into me from the tips of your fingers, my friend. And I was some fool to start that fight with you, Barry." "Just forget all that," murmured the other, and keep your voice down. I've forgot it.